Hello, everybody. It's Stephen and Walter here for another episode of So Chatty. This is episode number 184 for April the 25th, 2025. Two more sleeps before the retreat, I think. This is Thursday, wasn't it? So nine and Friday. Yeah, it would be two more sleeps. Yeah. Great. I've gotten up to counting to two now. Can you count beyond two?
Yeah, I have three fingers.
Oh, I'll give you three fingers, yeah. I'll give you one finger. Got a frog in my throat. Don't know why. Okay, so what are we going to talk about today? Well, this was a suggestion from a subscriber. They wanted us to talk a little bit about what we know now that we didn't know when we first got started in our sewing adventures. And, oh, there's quite a bit. It really is.
Yeah, when you really get to think about it, there is quite a bit.
Yeah. One thing is never to listen to other people's advice. But... No, seriously. No, whatever. But, yeah, this bloody throat. So we are going to talk about that in a moment. But first, let's take a look at what we've been working on. And when I say we, I mean me. And that would be the Barn Star Sampler. Well, I've got all the blocks, the individual blocks done. Now I'm putting them all together. And you put them together in sections according to the book. And yes, this pattern does come in a book. And so I've started doing that now. If I don't lose my voice. And it's coming along. We'll see how this works out. It's going to be big. It's a big quilt. I'm almost a little worried that I might not be able, and don't you say it, get it on Lucy. For it should be. I think it's only supposed to be about 80.5 inches wide. So yeah, it'll fit. But that's still pretty, getting close there because I got to have the overhang too for the quilting and the backing. But we'll worry about that when we get there. Right now, our biggest worry is, or my biggest worry is getting it all together. And I'll be happy to see the end of this. So, and the plan is possibly go on our bed. I'm not sure whether it will. I don't know yet. I have to see. It's hard to really visualize the total effect of this when you only see it in bits and pieces. So yeah, we'll carry on with that. Did another project this week, but we're actually going to talk about that and do a little bit of dissection on it in a few minutes. But before we get to that, let's talk about Sewing with Stephen on Wednesday, starting at 9 a.m. as usual. We had not a bad turnout this Wednesday. It's a come and go thing. So, somebody'd come in, somebody would leave, that kind of deal. But it was very pleasant. There was no discussion of politics. That is taboo. We do not discuss politics at all. We all get together and have a good time, and we are a mixture of Americans and Canadians, and we can prove that we can play nice with each other in spite of the situation that's going on right now with politics. So if you were a little worried about joining that because you were afraid it was going to get into a bit of a fray, it doesn't. It doesn't at all. So that's on Wednesdays. Links in the show notes. And sorry, we're keeping Walter up.
Yeah, sorry.
Basically. I guess I can switch over to this.
Sinus problem all of a sudden.
Oh, I got a throat problem. You got a sinus problem. Falling apart. My hairdresser's sick. And I was supposed to get my hair cut today. Now it's going to be 2 weeks before I can go in and get it cut again. Oh, well. Hippie time. Retreat update. Yes. Now, those of you that have registered for the retreat got sometime this morning, or no, yesterday morning. Almost left the dog out that we actually record this the day before it goes up. Yeah, so we're pretending this is Friday when it's not. Anyways,
yeah, that's why you said 2 sleeps.
That's right. Yeah. Oops. Oops. The secret's out. It's caught. Yes, we actually record So Chatty one day before it becomes available. It just works out easier.
So then you'll hear us screw up that there's like 2 days.
Yeah. Anyways, you know the secret, so it's not a secret anymore. Okay, what were we talking about? Oh yeah, the retreat. So I sent out an email that gives everybody the agenda for the day and has the links for both the icebreaker cocktail party and the link for the retreat. It is a Zoom. So those of you that registered now have that information for you. So you'll know when the guest speakers are on, what we're doing, the whole bit. I'm sorry if you did not get registered because it is closed. Now, I'm not taking any new registrations at this point in time. I did give you lots of time, though. So, sorry, maybe you can catch us in the fall because, you know, you snooze, you lose. And I know some of you just couldn't make that date and you would love to have come, but you had something else on, and that's what happens. Sure, it does. Everybody knows that. I won't hold that against you. Just going to tell you, I hope wherever you're doing that day is better than you think the retreat was going to be, because you're wrong. The retreat is going to be lots of fun. Prizes, good speakers, lots of fun. Okay, now that I've made you all very envious, also for those of you that were registered and you sent me a picture for the trunk show is now closed. Sorry if you missed that deadline as well. I gave lots of warning about it. The trunk show slideshow has now been created and I'm not changing it. So yeah. Now, those of you that may have missed that, but if you've got something that if you come to the icebreaker on Friday night, you can bring it along with you and show it to us then, if you want to, because I have said to people, if you want to show us something at the icebreaker, please bring it along. And, you know, you can do that. And it doesn't have to be a quilt. It could be a work in progress. It could be knitting. It could be crocheting. It could be sewing of a garment or any other kind of thing. It could be a lampshade. It could be a pillow. It could be a dog bed. It could be a dog. Whatever you want to show. Okay? Hold up your grandchildren. Yay! No. Actually, you'll know why I just said that in a moment. Okay, so retreat's on. It's going to be fun, and it starts at 8 a.m. Doors open at 8 a.m. As on Saturday. Yeah, but I mean, the official opening's at 9, and those of you who have an agenda know all that. It's there. Okay, so other news. Well, I said talking about grandchildren. Well, I don't have grandchildren for obvious reasons. Walter's past his childbearing years, so we're not having that. Oops. But I do have a new great niece. We do have a new great niece. And you know that I was making the giraffe quilt for her and some bibs. Well, there she is. This is Clara. And she's a chubby little thing. Look at those little chubby little feet on her. Why, you could just throw her in a pot and serve 4. But there she is, and she's got one of her little bibs on as well. Her mother sent these pictures to me. I don't know why that wants to do that all the time. And this is her monkey bib. And this is her piggy bib. The other one was her teddy bear bib. And there she is. She's a little smiler. She knows when a camera's on her. Her mother was like that when she was that age, too. I remember she was always smiling and giggling away. So
a full head of hair too.
Yeah, she does. And Katie had too. Her mother, Katie, had a full head of hair too when she was born as well. I wonder if her hair will lighten up or not, because her mother is kind of a blonde.
But her father's dark.
No, that's true. Her father's dark. So yeah. But anyways, she is a little cutie. And yeah, I said to my niece, she sent me a text message thanking me for the gifts that we sent out to Clara and everything. And I said, yeah, when Clara gets a little older, will appreciate the quilt a little bit more. The bibs she'll probably grow out of. Although I'm happy to see that right now her neck isn't big enough or too big for the neck hole. So I don't know. How fast does a baby's neck grow? Will it become like this big tree stump of a thing and you can't get a bib around it or what? I don't know. But anyways, so I had to show that. You know why? I consider it revenge. Because every time we're on a sew day or that, someone's got a picture of their grandchildren on there. Children are delicious done in the microwave. Just saying. I don't know.
Baby back ribs.
Yeah, baby back ribs. Ooh. Tender little juicy morsels. Yeah. I have never eaten a child. Well, as far as you know. Okay, so what's next? Well, I want to show you something that went terribly wrong. Well, not that terrible, but by Walter standards, it was a terribly wrong thing because I was an idiot. And I made a new bag. Okay. I call it the Dragon Bag. The reason being is I saw these designs. There's one on the back too, but you can't see it in here. I'll show it to you in real life in a moment. But I really wanted to embroider these because I thought they were great. This one's called Dragon and a Phoenix. There's a phoenix there. And with the dragon having a little, I don't know, they attack each other, whatever. So I knew that I would like to put those on the front of a bag. So I embroidered them all out. And this was a lot of stitches. This design was 125,000 stitches. It took over, the machine said 335 minutes to stitch it out. Yeah, I stitched it out over a couple of days. Because by the time you have to switch your thread colors and things like that, then it all adds up. But I built the bag. Now, here's what I was hoping to do. You notice the top part of the bag by the handles, there's that blue strip and everything, and then another sort of strip that runs along the edge. That's Walter's signature style of his bag.
No, it's not, because what in the world did you do there? That's weird. You didn't fold that over, did you?
What do you mean fold it over?
Like sew across the top and then fold it over.
No.
Okay, well, that's why.
Well, wait. What did I do? Oh no, that's two panels in here that made them, and I put them together. And yeah, I folded it over.
No, you didn't. I know, I can see that you didn't.
Well, I would have a raw edge if I didn't.
No, you sew it right sides together and then you flip it over.
I did that.
Oh, okay. Well, there isn't much.
You
didn't put any interfacing in here.
Yeah, I did. I put SF101.
Doesn't feel like it.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I did when I made the panel.
Feels like there's nothing in there. I don't think so.
Well, it was that stuff I bought from Monfil that I
Oh.
didn't like. So maybe it's thinner than SF101. And I top stitched it here.
Okay, well,
See, it's all, it does feel kind of thin though, doesn't it? I don't know what I did. Okay, that was disaster.
maybe what I should have done is
Maybe you should have shown me how to do it.
Yeah, I know. I think so.
Well, anyways, so there was that problem. Then Walter always likes to do a little decorative stitching across here. So I started to do that, and I wasn't having any luck with it. My machine, I tried different stitches. It didn't want to pull it through for some reason. It was kind of jamming up on me. And I thought, well, I don't have any interfacing there. So I asked him what he put for interfacing, and he didn't give me a very clear answer.
Well, no, what happened was I'd interface the entire panel. This entire panel.
Yeah.
I would interface it, becomes the inside, right? So I would interface the entire panel all the way down, right? And then I would put these right sides together, right? And I'd stitch 3/8 of an inch all the way across.
Oh, I didn't use 3/8 of an inch. It's an eighth. I never deal with 3/8.
What, an eighth? 3/8 of an inch.
Yeah, I don't deal with eighths.
You said you did an eighth. You didn't do an eighth.
I didn't do an eighth. I did quarter and half inch. Depending on my mood.
Or sorry, no, yeah. And then I would flip it over.
Yeah.
Right? You flip it over, and then you'd have a nice edge here, like you do right sides together.
A nice edge there.
And
it's just not your edge.
And then what you'd end up is on the edge, you'd have
no one can see what you're doing.
On the edge here, you'd end up, when you flip it over, you end up having a strip here that is interfaced. It's a double strip that's interfaced on both sides.
Oh. I still don't understand what you're doing. I am a visual learner.
Okay, well, I'll have to show you.
Yeah, I think we're going to have a new series coming up. Walter's going to teach me how to make a bag, his style. But anyways, I thought I was doing it his style. And then
That's close.
And then there's this other part here which is a full panel. That's not just a strip of fabric. It goes all the way down, and I interfaced.
It's close.
Maybe this is the one I interfaced, but maybe I didn't interface this one.
Probably not.
I was getting it mixed up. No, I don't think I did. No, I just sort of flipped it. Oh, well. Anyways, it's pretty. So then other problems. Well,
no, then the other thing is what's weird about it is,
what?
did you interface this one?
Yeah,
The
there's
outside
it.
one?
There's it.
Well, how come this one's thinner than that one?
I don't know.
So this feels like you put it on top of the bag.
I don't know what I did now. I'm trying to figure out what I did too. I don't know. I really don't know. Well, okay, but anyways, so this is a faux Walter style bag. It's, one made someplace where they have a sweatshop and don't put any things all into it. But that wasn't all. Now, I'm very happy with the handles at first because I bought this stuff from Sally Tomato at a quilt show or something, and I think it's really nice. And they're already folded over and they're all bound together, so you don't have to worry about anything for that. And Walter told me that they had to go about 9 inches down, and then you sew them up on either side. And I did that. So they're in here substantial, but what I didn't like, I thought, well, didn't he have a bigger pocket? Because this is a pocket right here.
Yeah, but my bag's wider.
Now you're just bragging now. Yeah, well, yeah. My bag started out wider, but I couldn't get it straight, so I kept trimming it until it was straight. So that might have been a problem. Anyways, yeah, then I said to him, my pocket isn't very big. And he goes, well, you're an idiot because you put your handles too close. But also because the bag isn't as wide as his bag, that may have been a problem there. But I said, not a problem. I mean, I can customize. I thought this would be, before I got the rest of the bag done, I said, well, this pocket is perfect. And there's one on both sides, perfect to hold a bottle of wine. So you're going off someplace, you got your bottles of wine in here, and you've got your other paraphernalia, your cocktail napkins, and your little munchy poos in here and everything, and off you go with the bag. Mind you, it's going to hold quite a bit because it's pretty damn long. It wasn't supposed to be this long, but if you see my bottom, it's a nice bottom. It's faux leather and everything like that, but my original intention was that this was going to go part way up, how you see them, like, so faux leather would be up about a third of the way or so on this, which would have made the bag a little shorter. I don't know, when I got sewing it and I did the box corners, it came out like this.
Yeah, because you did the boxes right into only the fabric part. The leather part should have been part of the box.
Well, it was. That's what I cut. I cut it in the leather. I didn't cut the fabric.
Okay, well, the bottom's really weird here too. Like
I have a little problem with the corners.
Okay, but you cut into the leather, but the leather shouldn't have been cut into if you wanted to show it up here.
Okay.
Right? So if you wanted the leather not to show it, and you don't have a seam at the bottom, so how the hell did you do that?
I just folded it in half. I attached this part to the top panel, laid it out, and put it on the bottom panel, and
I don't
just
understand,
fold it over.
Because I always have a seam in the center. I don't know how you do
Well, actually, I did it the way that was done when we did the in the hoop ones.
Oh.
Except I still cut it too much of a... I made two buttons.
I think I have a seam in the bottom of mine.
I don't know. I mean, and you have this nice stitch thing that goes all the way around the bottom, squares it. I couldn't figure out how you did that.
Oh, no, I just didn't have a stitch all the way around the bottom. I just have a stitch on the side here. I didn't put a stitch all the way around the bottom.
But why do you have a stitch on the side? Well, I have.
Well, the stitch is on the side to keep things from sliding it down under it through the bag and into the bottom.
Oh.
So like if you put something into the side, if you don't put that stitch there, it might slide. If it's a small item, it might slide underneath into the bottom.
Well, it can't slide underneath. I've got a lining. Nothing's going.
No, but the line. This isn't part of the
Oh,
lining.
in that part. Well, no, that part got stitched.
Yeah.
It got stitched into this. Yeah, it got stitched into that. Nothing can get under there.
Yeah. Okay. I still don't
Actually,
understand
it could
how
go
you did
around
that.
the sides. I don't know. Anyways, it's pretty. God. I mean, it will still work as a bag.
Okay, this is
But
what
it's-
happens when you have no conceptual idea as to how it's supposed to end up.
A neat pattern.
Yeah, this is an example of somebody that doesn't know how to visualize how a bag is supposed to be made.
It looks like a bag. It smells like a bag. It must be a bag. It's a bag for someone suggested on So Chatty the other day when we're not on our So Day.
It's a good bag to carry rulers.
Yeah, that's true. It's a ruler bag. That's what it is. It's a ruler bag. Somebody suggested it'd be great for umbrellas. And someone else said, oh, it'd be good on the golf course. What? You can put your golf clubs in it? Well, it's lengthy enough. But anyways, okay, I think we know of a new series that we may be starting up at some point where
Bag construction.
Walter's going to show me how to make a Wally bag. Yes, what we'll call the Wally bag. So, yeah, well, it kept me amused for a while. So, but I thought I'd share that with you because it's sort of leading into what today's topic is. And the topic is, what have we learned? I obviously haven't learned how to make a bag yet. You know, I used to make bags all the time and I didn't do too bad. Mind you, I never got as fancy as Walter with his. And how did you manage to, what books did you look in that you?
Oh no, I made that little purse that I made from that pattern. I went to a class, right? And I made one of these little purses, right? And the little purse is that design of the bag, right? Except that all I did was I took the purse design and I increased the size to make it into a bag.
Well, I never took that class. Probably should have. Anyways, well, isn't he just smug and superior about it all? Like, just smug figures. Right. Okay, so.
And I like that design because the handles get sewn in and you can't see the sewing on the handles, right? On the inside or the outside.
Well, I like the design because you've got several different colors of fabric in it. And you have that pocket on the outside if it all worked out well. And you know, you can have your faux leather come up on the sides of the bag. And if I figured that out, I don't know what I did wrong. But I did something very, very wrong. Well, I knew there was something going very wrong with the bottom when I went and I cut out the squares for boxing the corners, and they came awfully close to my seam line. And I'm thinking, oh, this isn't great. This isn't going to work. But I've already got it cut, so what the hell? Let's move on and see what happens.
Your seam line.
Yeah, it's, you see where when you cut out the squares for the corners. Well, when I cut them out, they were very close to where that faux leather joins to the rest of the bag. In fact, they're almost up against it.
Oh, jeez.
So I don't
know. Yes.
Well, you told me to make the bottom 7 inches wide.
Yeah, but not like that. That's when you cut out the corners, your bottom automatically becomes 7 inches wide. Yes.
Well, that's not what you said. You didn't see. It's not all my fault. I asked him for these things.
Well, I asked him how to make the bottom. I said that you don't make a square panel for a bottom. You leave
out information.
I thought you knew how to make a bag.
Well, obviously, if I was coming to you and asking you for help, I didn't know how to make that kind of bag.
Well, I don't put the full leather on the bottom of my bag. I just put I just use the fabric on the bottom. But, I mean, if I had to put the faux leather, what I would have done is I would have taken a strip of faux leather and sewed it onto the bottom of the bag, right? That was bigger than the squares that you cut.
Well, there was an idea. What, you mean?
Just a strip. Like, okay,
So you've got 2 strips now. You've got a strip that's going on the bag and you've got a strip for the bottom.
No, you don't have anything for the bottom.
But then everything will fall out of your bag.
You end up having a seam at the bottom of your bag.
Yeah, you're gonna have to show me how this works because I'm having a hard time visualizing this. I am a not a, I'm a visual learner, not someone who can deal with stuff that's just floating in the air out of somebody else's head. So live and learn. So we are going to talk about living and learning. We're moving away from the dragon bag. And let's talk about what we've learned. Now, these aren't in any particular order. In fact, it's basically a brainstorming list. I sat down today and just brainstormed everything that I have learned. Yeah, I have learned some things. I'm not a complete idiot. Don't even go there or say it. So we're going to go back. You got a list, don't you?
Yeah, sort of, yeah.
Okay, so we can go back and forth on this anyways and see what your opinion is on some of the things I put down.
Okay, well, my first one has doesn't obviously apply to you.
Why? What is it?
I said, most sewing challenges that look complicated can be completed with some perseverance. Right?
Maybe, unless you're me. I do the simplest things with the grace of complexity. Ricky? Okay, what else have you got on there?
No, I just said too many people procrastinate because of the unknown.
Well, I never
Right?
procrastinate.
You end up procrastinating. Like people will buy an embroidery machine and leave it in the box for 3 years because they figure, oh, it's going to be too hard to use.
See, my problem is the opposite. I plunge right in when I should probably think about it a little bit more
and my
deeply.
second one is learn from your mistakes.
Oh, I always learn from my mistakes because I make enough of them. My problem is keeping them organized in my head so I don't forget them. Okay, well, one of the things that are more specific than yours is the importance of knowing how to sew a straight seam. Okay? I never realized how important that is. Now, because, I mean, yeah, you want to sew straight. I get that. But, you know, occasionally you might go a little wowie this way or wowie that way, and you just compensate. At least that's what I was doing when I first started doing quilts. Not a good idea. And, you know, they always go back for beginner quilters. It's always that how to do a 1/4 inch seam. And I always thought, well, this is not hard. I have a foot that has a little bar on it, a little guide. And it's at a 1/4 inch. And so you just shove your fabric through and it's going to make a nice straight 1/4 inch. That's what I thought. And I did that for a long time. But then I was measuring my pieces when I was done, or the whole quilt, and it never came out to the same dimensions exactly. It always came out a little smaller than what the pattern said, and I couldn't understand it. It looked fine. At least I thought it did. But I never figured that out. And then one day someone said to me, because I was really struggling with a pattern, getting the dimensions right, and they said, what are you using? What's your quarter? Are you using a 1/4 inch foot? And I said, yeah. And that's the one with the guide on it. And they went, oh no, don't use the one with the guide. And I said, why? It's there. It's supposed to give you a perfect 1/4 inch seam. They said, the problem is you can't see it when it goes on, your fabric goes under your needle because the bar's in the way. It looks like you've got your fabric butted up against that little guide bar, but when it gets underneath the machine, the feed dogs or whatever can send it off a little ways from that. And so what you end up with is you don't have an accurate 1/4 inch seam allowance. So I went out and I looked for another foot. Now, here's an idiot move. I have an M7, a Janome M7. It has a special, what do you call it? Foot plate?
Yeah.
With it. That has a single hole in it.
It's an HP foot.
And it's called the HP. Stands for high performance plate. And there is a foot that goes with that you're supposed to use with it called the HP foot, which is basically a thin foot with a hole in the center of it. and it lines up with the hole in the plate. I just thought, well, they call it high performance. This is for people who, sew at a very rapid speed and it keeps everything, straight through. No. Well, it might do that, but it is an accurate 1/4 inch seam. All you have to do is line up the edge of the foot with your fabric, keep it straight under that foot, and you'll have a 1/4 inch seam allowance, and it works very, very effectively. And ever since I started using that, I haven't had the problem I was talking about before with the size of my patchwork with it. So yeah, I learned something there that I did not know. And so then I think back to my original quilts, my first ones that I made, and how wonky they were, to the point where, yes, fabric will stretch. Don't do that. Don't do that to make it fit. And I was really stretched and going, well, what the heck? Or, no one's going to notice that little gather. It's only small. It'll steam out. We'll come to steam in a minute. That's a no-no. But at the time, well, guess what? No. And then your whole quilt, when you're done with it and you go to put your binding on it or you go try and square it up, it's wonky. Very wonky. So that is probably the most important lesson that I learned. And I was kind of smug about it, going, oh, come on. It's easy to keep your stuff under your foot straight. Yeah, there's more to it than that. So I guess this isn't something you've had to worry about so much, because it seems to me when you taught me how to do a shirt,
Yeah, I don't need to have
forgiving.
accurate. I don't need it to be as accurate.
It's awfully forgiving.
But I do like having very straight lines when I, especially I do a band, or when I sew around my pockets and stuff like that. So I'm very careful. I use guides on the feet edges of the feet or whatever as a guide to sewing down a straight line.
Yeah. Now the other thing too I learned is speed kills. You get going and you're doing chain stitching or something on your pieces and you're going, I've got a guide, not a problem. No, it's a problem, because it all depends on your machine. It depends on how well your feed dogs work, all that kind of stuff. But it is very easy to go a little off. And you don't think. You go off by a 1/16 of an inch here or there, it's not going to make any difference. It makes a difference. It does. It's hard to believe.
I mean, somebody can be very experienced and have a high-speed machine, and they've been sewing for a long time, and they might be able to do that sort of thing. But I mean, especially when you're a beginner or whatever, you need to really take note of your seams.
Yep. So, I hear this so much, getting the accurate 1/4 inch seam allowance. And it is. It's a thing. It is a thing. Okay, so another thing that, and this is in no particular order, as I say, actually, I think I'll jump to this one, though, because we were talking about steam. Okay, I put up a stink with these people who are saying, don't use steam. First of all, a lot of them were saying that putting water in your iron, even though it's a steam iron, will rot it, and you'll have problems with it, and your iron will stop working and all that. I'm still not completely sold on that totally, because then why do they sell steam irons, especially really expensive ones like mine that I have, that has the tank and the whole bit? Mind you, the steam is not in the iron, it's in the tank. So maybe that makes a difference. But that's not really what I learned about that. I was having a hard time, again, and even though I knew I now have a 1/4 inch seam allowance that's accurate, my pieces were not coming out exactly. They were off by about 1/8 of an inch. And someone said to me, well, are you steaming your pieces when you're pressing your seams? Yeah, of course I am. I want the seams to lay flat. They're going, don't do that. It shrinks your fabric. And I go, no, it doesn't. My fabric doesn't shrink. It's good quality quilting cotton.
Especially since you don't pre-wash it.
Yeah, and I don't pre-wash it either. And I still won't.
Well, if you pre-wash it, you pre-shrink it.
Yeah. And then you have to iron it again, and you have to, that's a whole lot of work for what? for something you're going to cut up into little pieces. Anyways, I know there's lots of people out there that always pre-wash, and there's lots of people like me that do not pre-wash. And there's reasons for doing that. But what I'm saying about the steam is the steam did shrink the fabric slightly. What we weren't talking about it shrinking my fabric 1/4 of an inch, or even possibly an 1/8 of an inch, maybe a 1/16 of an inch, but it compounds. If that happens to all of your pieces and then you're starting putting them together, that can create a problem, and it did. So I thought I'll do like I'd heard other people saying this: don't steam it, don't steam it. So I thought I'd prove a point to myself, and then I was going to reveal to the rest of the world that nah, it doesn't matter. Nope, joke's on me. It does matter. I took a couple of pieces of fabric, I stitched them together. One I steamed to flatten my seam, the other I did not. Guess what? They shrunk. That was my problem. I no longer use steam. What I use is this, which you probably have heard of. It is called the Acorn Precision Piecing Solution. It can come in a bottle, a spray bottle, or you can put it in this little pen that they're showing at the bottom, which is basically, if you're familiar with crafting, with painting, it's a paintbrush. It's got a hard nib. All you do is fill this with this stuff, with this precision pressing solution, and you just wipe it across your seam and press your seam, and your seam in most cases will lay flat. No steam. I use this all the time, and it works very well. And by the way, it's a Canadian product as well, but it's available most quilting stores anywhere now. They have some other products to go along with it. In the little bottle with the needle in the top of it to the one side, that is the glue. They have a for precision piecing. I have never used the glue. I've tried it. I know a lot of people, if they want accurate patchwork, they're having trouble, they will use this, or they'll use a glue stick, a washable glue stick, that kind of thing. I don't, because right now I get everything fairly accurate because I'm doing what I've already said that I do with it. But this is good stuff. I really like it. I have it by the huge jug for refilling it. It isn't particularly cheap, but it's worth the effort. Now, it is not starch, okay? It's a kind of a starch alternative, but your fabric, it'll wash right out of your fabric, and it doesn't make your fabric really, it does make it a little bit stiff, but not stiff like starch would. Nowhere near that. But it really does, however it works, it makes your seams lay flat, usually. Sometimes there's a bit of a struggle, but most of the time. So I highly recommend this. It's worth the money. What else do you have on your list?
I don't know. I just said that, like I started making this list, and then it started realizing it was getting really complicated. So what I was saying is that it's I've learned a lot of different things with sewing. I've learned that there's a lot of things to know about sewing.
Okay.
But in your situation, you're only really making quilts for the vast majority of things. So you're only viewing this based on quilt making, whereas I'm looking at this based on garment sewing more.
Yeah, well, that's okay, because we have people out there that
garment sew. I mean, there's so many complicated things, like different needles you can use, different threads you can use, different threads that match different needles that you use. There's in garment sewing, there's different kinds of fabrics that you use, different weights of fabric that you can use, different kinds of fabrics for different kinds of sewing that you use.
So can I summarize what you're getting at in a long-about way? Know your fabric, and know your needles, and know your thread, and pick the ones that are most appropriate to work together.
right? But that part of that is also a learning curve,
Yes, it is.
right? You know, you
Because
have to make something first and make some mistakes
Mhm,
before you learn what works for
mhm.
you.
Well, when I first got into doing this, I did not know anything about sewing machines. I'd never really used one before. I made the assumption that one needle fits all. You just buy a package of universal needles or just needles. I didn't know there were sizes or what those size numbers meant. Like when you see the slash, like 90/14, 80/12, that kind of thing. I didn't know that the first two numbers are in the metric or European system, and the last two numbers are the equivalent in the American system, in the North American system, for doing that. I didn't know about weights of thread. Like, you can't put a thread this big through a hole this small, kind of a deal. I'm exaggerating that, but you can't do that. And if you try to do that, what problems are you going to have? So you have, your thread shreds, or it breaks all the time, or it's going to cause a problem with your tension. I didn't know any of those things mattered when I started. I know now. So yeah, you probably use about 3 different types of needles when you're making a shirt, right? Like a top stitch,
Well, no,
regular.
I don't. I use personally with these shirts, I just use one needle, a jeans
Oh,
needle. But I
okay.
mean, if I were to make a shirt using stretch fabric, like a jersey or something, then I have to use a ballpoint
Hmm.
needle for that because otherwise the threads can shred that you're sewing.
So the bottom line here is one size does not fit all. You have to know what it is, what you are making, and the materials you need to make that project that are appropriate to that kind of project. There are people out there when it comes to like quilting cotton, they don't like batiks. They don't like sewing with batiks because they think that the needle punches too big of holes in batiks. That's not the batik's fault. That's the fault of the size of the needle that you're using. I love sewing with batiks. Batiks have less fraying on them for one thing. And then some people say, well, you can't mix batiks with quilting cotton in a quilt. Yes, you can. There's no rule that says you cannot.
And there's no rule that says that you have to use quilting cotton
No. For it. I mean, well, what? To use quilting cotton?
in a quilt.
Well, no, but
I mean,
what are you going to make it out of?
Lydia made
Burlap? Oh, yeah,
a
yeah.
quilt using linen.
That's true. Lydia's one of our friends and also a subscriber on here, and she loves to experiment with fabric in her quilts and techniques and things. And yeah, she was using linen.
She was using linen and quilting cotton.
Mm-hmm. And it looked spectacular.
Yeah.
With it. So, like you can do these things. They say there's no such thing as quilt police. Yes, they are, but they're usually bitchy women who don't want to change their ways with it. Oh, and bitchy men too. Okay, shouldn't be sexist here.
Bitchy sewers.
Bitchy sewers, yeah. The ones who've been sewing for 50 years, they know it all. Well, and they probably do know quite a bit. I wouldn't underestimate it. They must have learned over time. But the technology has changed in how we do things and what products are now available to us. I mean, ask anybody who started quilting in the 1970s or the 80s, and they'll tell you like pretty much the only fabrics they could really get their hands on were polyester with it. Well, working with polyester in those days is very different from working with the quilting cotton or the batiks that we have today too. So I guess the thing that I'm trying to get across here is what you learn from experience is what things work well together. Doesn't mean you shouldn't experiment. That's how you learn from it. I experiment all the time, like on the dragon bag. And we saw how that turned out, don't we? But there's something that I've learned that I didn't have on my list, but it made me think of that. If it goes bad, it goes bad. Don't worry about it. Start again. Or scrap it and move on to something else. You don't have to finish a project. Last week or so, I got out a pattern. I wanted a palette cleanser away from the Barnstar sampler thing because it's been driving me nuts for 2 years. And And so I found what I thought was a simple pattern and started working on that. I very quickly found this was not bringing me joy. I didn't like really how the pattern was written. It was a Missouri Star quilt one. I find Missouri, I'm sorry, this is sacrilege, people. I know you're going to yell at me. Go ahead, hate me in the comments. I will ignore them because I can. But the ones that Missouri Star Quilt comes up with need to have a little bit more detail in many cases. Okay. So I didn't like it. It wasn't bringing me joy. And before I wasted any more fabric on this and time, I went, why am I doing this? If I don't like it, scrap it. There's nothing wrong with that. It's supposed to be fun.
Yeah, and don't assume that a pattern is a definitive set of instructions to create the project that you're doing, because as time goes on, you'll learn this, that not all patterns are well written, and sometimes you may have to improvise or deviate from the pattern.
And that brings up another good point. Something that you've heard me say this before, but I'm infamous for, telling you what to do and I don't do it. Read the bloody pattern from beginning to end. It is boring, I find, to read a pattern. That's why I don't do it. I want to get right in there. So I'll read a few of the instructions and just get started. No, you shouldn't do that. I've gotten caught a couple of times with that. I went, oh, I guess if I just read a little further, I wouldn't have had that problem. So read it. What were you going to say?
Yeah, it's a good idea to have a good understanding of what you're tackling or what you're making.
Or you'll end up with a dragon bag. Yeah, bring it always back to home to that one. But yeah, so it's important to read the patterns, and patterns, as Walter already said, there are bad patterns. They leave out something, or something is mixed up in it, or whatever. So if you read it before you cut any fabric, you might save yourself some grief. But at the same time, don't waste your time and energy moaning over it. Accept that mistakes happen, whether they're your mistakes or somebody else's in the pattern. Just get over it. Take what you've learned from this and apply it to the next project in the future or whatever.
And a bad pattern, or not a bad pattern, a pattern with mistakes sometimes gets by publishers that publish these patterns.
They get by a lot, actually.
Actually, they get by a lot. Probably some more sketchy patterns come from places that, if you purchase directly from a person that you don't know very well, that creates patterns or think they create patterns, may sometimes not give you a very good pattern. So what I mean is, somebody that's an amateur that's created a garment or a bag or whatever, and then they create a pattern. They say, oh, okay, I'm gonna write a pattern for this bag and I'm gonna sell it, right? And they write a pattern, and unless they've got it tested by other testers, or have other people look at
or a technical
editor, there's a chance you might end up inadvertently buying a bad pattern where they don't give clear instructions, and unless you're somebody that knows what they're really already doing and not a beginner, you might be able to get through it. But that's not the point of a pattern. A pattern should be written in such a way that a beginner can figure out how to make it.
Yeah. I've written a few patterns. I'm not going to say they've been perfect. I've gone through them many, many times, trying to make them as idiot-proof, if you pardon the expression, as I possibly can. Writing patterns is an extremely difficult skill to learn. You just don't sit down, like Walter said, and write a pattern because you've already made something. No, you really have to get inside the mind of somebody you've got to assume everybody's a beginner, I think, is the best way to go about it. Write for the lowest denominator. Err on the side of giving too much information. and make sure, and good patterns are ones that break everything down into small little bite-sized pieces. How to eat an elephant one bite at a time.
Yeah, I
So
mean, and it's better to give too much instruction than not enough.
yeah, in an organized way. But you will find patterns out there. And the other thing that I have learned too is, as soon as I have a problem with a pattern, or I suspect that something's wrong with it, like it's not written right, I go to the website for that pattern and see if someone has put up a correction page, because often pattern designers do. It pays to go and check on the website and see. I've been caught up with that before. I didn't think about it, and I got halfway through the pattern and there was something that didn't make sense to me, whatever, and I didn't think to go to the website. So then I improvised, and that's when you get into trouble. It isn't a bad thing to use a pattern as a guide, as Walter was referring to earlier. I know there are people who hate to follow patterns. They like to do their own thing. They're improv quilters or garment makers, or, they create art quilts, which really don't necessarily have a specific pattern. They might be based on a pattern idea, but they've gone beyond that. And some people can do that. Some people cannot. Some people feel very comfortable just letting it happen. Others need guidance. So, you've got to think about what your style is too, and when you're picking a pattern, but don't be afraid to change things in a pattern. They're not written in stone, they're just written on paper, or in today's day and age, they're floating in digital space, that kind of thing. So some other things. What are we talking about? All right. Another thing, okay, I talked about having an accurate 1/4 inch seam allowance and straight seams and all that stuff there. Well, another thing that contributes to, bad patchwork is the lack of accurate cutting. Okay. You have to know, and here's how you have to know your tools. You've got to know how to read a quilting ruler. There's a lot of markings on quilting rulers, and not all quilting rulers are the same or are equal, depending on how those marks are and how they've done it. Now, some people like to use their cutting mats as their guide. I say no, because cutting mats are not always, because of the way they print them, can be off a little bit. So you need to check those against something that is accurate, like a ruler. But you should always use, and this is not coming from me, this is coming from a lot of sources out there with, experienced quilters. Always use a good quilting ruler to cut with, for your measurements. Now, having said that, you've got to have a ruler that's straight. Do rulers warp? Yeah, they can. They can over time, overuse, depends on the quality of the ruler. You get what you pay for. But what happens if you accidentally dig into it with the edge of your rotary blade? Now you got a nick. And your rotary blade rides right up against that edge of that ruler. So if there's a nick, that means your ruler's going to, or your rotary cutter's going to shift a little bit. Not a lot, but it's going to shift. And that can cause a problem later on with straight cutting. Now, a lot of people like, and I'm one of them, love the Stripology rulers by GE Designs. They're the ones with the slots. They're all marked, and you put it down, you flip it through it. You got to be careful with those. The bigger the ruler, the Stripology ruler, the more warping can happen in the slots. Your plastic in there is a little bit thinner between slots, and if you put too much pressure on the edge or whatever, you can slightly move the little slot over. It's only a little bit, probably 1/32 of an inch or so, but if you do that, you can get a wow in your fabric. It may not be like, it's not going to be so obvious that you're going to look at and go, oh my God, look at that, I've got a half moon cut into it. But it's enough. You no longer have a straight edge when you're trying to to butt it up or trying to do a 1/4 inch seam allowance on it. So you got to cut accurately. Now you're going to say, well, there's a way around that, isn't there? Don't you have an AccuQuilt? That's accurate every time. No, it is not. And I'll tell you why. AccuQuilt usually says you shouldn't cut any more than 6 layers of fabric at one time. But you know what we do when we have an AccuQuilt? Go, oh, well, if it'll go through the machine, I can put a couple other layers on. That'll save me time. I've done it. Don't do it. The reason they're telling you that, there's 2 reasons. One reason is because, it'll be forcing the little rollers that press down on it beyond their limit, and that can wreck your machine. The other reason is it's squishing your fabric down onto some sharp little blades. And the more fabric that's there, the less there is to hold everything absolutely perfectly straight, and things will slide just a little bit. You won't notice it, but you will when you start to piece it. So don't do more than 6 layers of fabric in an AccuQuilt. Also, those little slots where the blades come up, they have a special tool set. Looks like dentist tools, actually, little hooks. You have to clean out those slots every now and then because little strands of thread get caught down inside of them and you can't see it. And that causes a bad cut as well. So you need to inspect your dies and make sure your little ridges around the cutting blades are clear of any of that kind of stuff that's in it. So yeah, there's a lot to accurate cutting. Best advice is this: don't cut when you're tired. Don't cut when you need it in a rush. And don't cut it when you're drunk. Okay? Sure, it'll look good that when you're doing it, but the next day when you've looked at the pieces, you'll wonder what happened there. So just don't drink and cut. But seriously, you have to be every stage of cutting in quilting and stone, everything in quilting has to be accurate if you want to have it accurate. In garment making, however...
Oh, but one thing that you do need to be accurate with is the size of your pattern, right?
What do you mean?
Okay, if I'm making a pattern or a shirt pattern or something.
You mean the clothing size that you would be
Yeah,
wearing?
I know, like the garment patterns that they come as, you will get sizes like small, medium, large, extra large, double extra large, all this other stuff with your pattern, right? And first of all, some patterns have only certain sizes included in their pattern. They may have a pattern that just goes up to small sizes, or some patterns that only do larger sizes, or there's some patterns that do all sizes, right? So you have to make sure you get the right pattern, right? And the other thing is that if, let's say, you go to the store and you wear a size medium, right, and off the rack, usually you buy a shirt and it's a medium and it always fits you, don't assume that you can just cut out a medium size pattern and it's going to fit you. You have to measure your size. You got it. There's a guide usually on the patterns that tell you where to measure your shoulders and your chest and your waist and everything. And you have to pick a pattern that's on the outside that's associated with the sizes of your body. And they usually tell you what the finished size of the pattern is as well. And you may be disappointed that it's no longer a medium and you are now a large on that pattern. Or you may actually be an extra large on that pattern.
Or 2XL.
Yeah. So you have to pick the pattern based on your body size, basically. And on these patterns, and that's something I've learned, is that even though you're going, oh, I didn't think I was an extra large. and then but that's just the way these patterns work. And I think garments that are sold in the stores are obviously maybe less true to size or whatever garment. They seem to be, they're made to fit a variety of sizes of bodies. So
Well, I think a lot of it has to do with vanity.
yeah.
Like Walter said, you go into a store, you buy a shirt. For years, I always wore a medium. And as I got a little older, I started wearing large, and I kind of thought, well, I haven't put on that much weight or anything why am I a large now? I've kind of passed my growing spurts in the whole bit. Well, to be honest, the clothes you buy in a store and the way they're sized,
Have changed over
have
the years.
changed over the years. And like, for example, and I'm sure many of you have found this, you go in to buy a pair of jeans. And the last time you went in to buy a pair of jeans, you got maybe, well, I'm talking men's sizes. I may have gotten a 34-inch waist. I bought the same jeans again, and the 34s are tight. Now, yes, it could be because I put on a little weight. But so I get another size up, get a pair of 36s. They fit fine. So I want two pairs of jeans. And they're the same brand in the whole bit. And I grab another pair of 36. I get them home. One pair fit okay.
And the other pair don't.
The other pair don't. They're too tight. Slightly too tight. And that's because there's no quality control. Where are these jeans coming from? Where most of the clothes are not made in North America. They're coming. These are made in sweatshops. So really, those people are being paid by piece. They're going quick. There is nobody there to check the accuracy of it. So what I'm saying is, when you go and you buy clothes, you got to try them on. When you get a pattern, don't be surprised that the pattern may be like, what size is this shirt?
That's a 2XL.
This is a 2XL. I am not a 2XL guy. I'm sorry. I am not. I'm not that big. I mean, I'm not that small, but I'm not that big. If I was in a store and I try on a 2XL shirt,
You're swimming in it.
I'd be swimming in it. So where they come up with this in their pattern making, I have no idea. So put vanity aside. You want something that's going to look good when you're done and fits you properly. What's the point of putting 3 pounds of shit in a 2-pound bag? Okay. Just think about that. All right. Okay. So yeah. Speaking of fabrics too, not all fabric is the same. Quilting cotton. If you buy it from a reputable quilt store, you're probably buying first quality quilting cotton. You're buying from a name brand. You're buying Kona, Riley Blake, Timeless Treasures, Northcott, whatever it is. You can be pretty much assured you're getting good quality. And that's in a quilt store. But if you go to these big warehouse-like fabric places, like we used to have ones out here called Fabric Land, they sell seconds.
And they sell from manufacturers you've never heard of before.
Yeah. And you need to feel it. Now, I know there's a lot of people who said during COVID and they were starting to buy a lot of their quilting supplies, quilting cotton online. And then some people said, I don't like buying online. I want to feel the quilting cotton. My answer to that was, yeah, it's nice to feel it, but I haven't had any problem buying it online. But here's why. I bought name brand from reputable retailers. So I was pretty much assured that I was going to get first quality quilting cotton. But if you went to a place like Fabricland, or there's a place in Canada called Len Mills.
Yeah, like I had to buy a lot of, when I was doing classes for sewing different garments, I needed different kinds of fabrics like jersey and a bunch of different types of denim products, or was it brush twill or something like that. I had to figure out from buying online because it was during COVID and I couldn't just go somewhere and look at it. So I had to go buy weights of fabrics, how heavy the fabric was, and actually they're reputable dealers of these products as well, and basically purchase blind. right? And some of the stuff I got, actually, one of the things I bought, they had a big sale on Fabric Land, which I didn't care for that much. And I bought a bunch of stuff from them because it was on sale, and it was very poor quality.
And that's the thing. We're all, you know, right now, especially buying fabric for whatever you're going to make is costing a lot of money. It is very tempting when you see a sale to go, ooh, and buy a lot of that. You need to feel it. You need to find out who manufactured it. And it would depend. The ones that put it on like on a sale that you can't believe, it's too good to be true, are probably not your local quilt stores.
And there was one lady in our group that went to a store that had cheap fabric, and she was part of her task for the garment we were getting. She needed some cotton, well, basically for lining for pockets, and so she went to the store and bought a bunch of this fabric, cotton fabric, for $1.98 a meter, just like unheard of cheap, right? And if I pre-wash my fabric for when I do a shirt, so I buy quality quilting cotton. Most of my shirts are made out of quilting cotton, and what I do is I pre-wash my fabric, and usually when I pull it out of the dryer, it's a little bit wrinkled, but I iron it up, but it's not very wrinkled. And when I wash these shirts, most of the time we don't iron them, so
No, I never iron these shirts.
but you know,
nice and smooth.
and so, but in her case, she pre-washed her fabric and it came out in a big ball with lots of fraying on it.
She got up all the string.
And basically, she goes, "Well, how do I keep this from doing that?" And everybody turned around and said, "Buy good quality.
Don't buy it." Yep. But you're going to be tempted, right? Especially when you first, I was, when I first got into quilting. I mean, and that back then, when I think back 7 years ago or so, it was a lot cheaper for quilting cotton than what I'm paying now. But still, it seemed kind of expensive, you know, especially if you're going to make mistakes. You know, you thought, oh, well, I don't want to wreck this kind of thing. So, no, it wasn't worth it to put the money in. Now, Amazon and Temu sell fabric. I have never ordered fabric from Amazon. They do sell some name brand ones you've heard of, but you know, that could be seconds from the store or from the manufacturer, so you're not really sure. It may work out okay, it may not. In Temu, I actually, as a lark, I bought some squares of fabric, some charm pack squares, like from them, ridiculously cheap. They weren't horrible, but they did not feel right. And so I would never have used those to put them in a quilt. I just want to see, like, I think I got 10 or 20 pack of charms for like $2.99 or something like that. I had to see, but yeah, no, don't do it. So what other things have we learned? Well, this is stuff you hear us preach all the time. It is very important that you keep your machines cleaned and oiled regularly. And what I mean by regularly is basically after every major project.
And recently we've heard people say, "Oh, that's a lot of work to clean my machine after every quilt." Oh,
it's not
that much. It's
less than 5 minutes.
And it's easy. The more you do it, the easier it is, and it becomes a habit. You should always do that.
But having said that, and this just happened recently to me. Okay, I've been working on that Barnstar sampler, right? And I'm in the groove at the moment. Away I go. My machine came up and said, "Hey, it might be nice if you gave me a little clean here, okay?" And I went, "Hey, I'm busy. I'll look after you later on." I haven't been sewing on this for that long right now. It's fine. No, it wasn't. Because my thread was starting to break. regularly. And then I'm looking at my stitches in it. I'm going, oh, this isn't right. My stitches are not looking the way they should look. They don't look, the tension looks a little off on them. They're not looking like individual stitches. They're almost looking like one big stitch kind of thing. I think, oh no, there's something wrong. Something wrong. Well, the first thing I check when there's something wrong is something's come unthreaded. Rethread your machine from the start. I learned that. I take shortcuts. Oh, it's only come out down here in this bar here. I'll just put that back. Sometimes that works. But most of the time, just rethread the whole darn machine. It's not that big a deal. It takes seconds, literally seconds on a modern machine. Check your bobbin thread. It may have come unthreaded as well in there and it's looped itself around. That could be a problem. Again, rethread it. It takes
and don't
literally 2
automatically
seconds.
a lot. I hear a lot of people online say, "Oh, just adjust the tension." Well, no. The last thing that you need to do is adjust the tension. The first thing you need to do is make sure your machine is clean. Make sure you got a new needle in your machine. Make sure your machine is threaded right and everything else before you start adjusting the tension.
Yeah, don't screw around with tension. Now, on modern computerized machines, your tension is probably already has an automatic computerized setting on it. Mine does.
Well,
I've
mind
never
you, I
touched
did
it.
have some bad stitching. Remember, we were at that retreat. I had some bad stitching on my machine all of a sudden, and I was looking. I was trying to figure out how it was. My machine has a little knob at the front that shows tension at the front of the machine. Somehow my knob had changed completely to the wrong location, and I don't know how that happened.
No, that's still a mystery.
Yeah, I know. But then after
Was
I
it me?
readjusted it, it was fine again.
Yeah. So, there are cases, but most of the time, no. So, back to my example here. So I rethread the machine, the bobbin, the whole bit, and no, it's still not right. Then I remembered, oh yeah, it was reminding me back a little bit time. Yeah, it's time for cleaning. So I stopped, I opened it up. I mean, all it is you take the little plastic cover off the foot plate, you pull out your bobbin, and then you pop your foot plate or unscrew it, whichever on your machine, and get in there with your little makeup brushes or whatever and clean out the dust bunnies.
Actually, just wanted to clarify when I was talking about the tension thing. That was just the knob on the machine for tension, which is a normal place to adjust your tension and making sure it's in the right spot.
Oh, if you have
But
a
what
machine
I
that
was
has that.
saying about people that were saying it was a tension problem, they were pulling their bobbin cases out and adjusting the tension.
Yeah.
And that's a spot where I think you really shouldn't
They
be
were
doing
playing
that.
with the bobbin case. There's a little screw on the little hook that's in there, and you can adjust the tension with that. But that is at the most extreme, and it needs to be done by somebody who really knows what they're doing, because
Yeah, that's a spot. Like, I mean, if you're adjusting the tension and the knob on the front of your machine, that's one thing.
yeah.
But adjusting the tension on your bobbin case, that's an extreme case, and that is someplace you shouldn't really be adjusting.
But before you even get close to talking about tension on this, get in there with your makeup brushes or whatever
Yeah.
and clean it out. Now you might look in there and go, well, it's not that dirty. There's nothing much. No, it's the things you can't see. They build up under there. Clean it out. One of the best things you can invest in is a little portable air compressor, a little air blower, not a hair dryer. Okay, one that concentrates the air. You can get them on Amazon. They're really inexpensive. And you give it a good blow in that, and you'll be surprised. Yeah, blow it. And then add your drop of oil to the wick. Don't let it go dry. Give it a drop of oil. And you want to know something? When you put it all back together, probably your problem has been solved with that. So that is one of the things I did not know when I first started in all of this. I didn't think it was a big deal, just like I didn't think it was a big deal that you could use any needle you wanted. No, it's a big deal. It really is.
So back to this stuff, it's also know your sewing machine. Get to know your sewing machine. Get to know how it works and the idiosyncrasies of your own sewing machine. What settings are best for you and everything else. And that sort of thing. That's important for getting to know your sewing machine, getting to know how your sewing machine sounds when it stitches.
Yeah, because you will. You use your sewing machine enough, you will know when it's purring like a kitten and when it's got a hiccup in there. And that means there's a problem. And as time goes by with the experience, the more you use it, the more you'll understand what the hiccups mean and how to fix a problem. Actually, possibly fix a problem before the problem has actually happened.
And get used to using, well, not so much for quilting, but different accessories or different feet or different stitches on your machine.
But having said that, don't try to make your machine do something it's not intended to do. Okay. I'll give you an example, and this comes from embroidery machines. But the concept could apply to a domestic machine too. For example, rope bowls. Everybody was into the rope bowl. Get this clothesline rope, put it in a spiral, put it in, and then make these bowls, and then take it to your embroidery machine and embroider on the base, bottom of it. Everybody was doing it except me, because I was trying to figure out why my foot of my machine was not going high enough. It would catch on the rope. Well, a lot of people were having that problem, but they had some very unique solutions to it, and none of those were ones that helped the machine with it. So they were forcing it, and then needles break, and that's a health problem there. When your needle breaks, you could get a piece of it in your eye, because they're not designed to do that. Now, some embroidery machines do have an auto feature that allows you to raise or lower the presser foot. My Janome does not with it. So not doing that. And the other thing, and here's where I'm going to get hate mail. Embroidery machines are not designed to do a quilt, to quilt a quilt like a long arm machine does. Now, before you say anything, I know that lately Bernina has come out with a new machine. Janome's come out with a new machine, and they're talking all about, hey, you can quilt in them, in the hoop. And there are people who have done it and done it successfully. I don't recommend it. I think there's too much that can go wrong, not just in the fact that it might wreck your quilt, you might wreck your machine. Manufacturers sell this feature because they know people who can't afford a long arm but hate doing quilting on free motion on a domestic. That's what they're gearing it to. Maybe you'll be lucky and it'll work fine with you. You'll never have a problem. Or maybe it'll break your machine and it's a big investment. You do you. But I think it's when your machine gets busted because you're doing something the machine is really not geared to do. Onus is on you. You do you with that kind of thing.
If it works for you, do it, but be aware that it could cause you problems.
Yep. Be careful, to say the least. And that brings me to one other thing. Beware of gadgets. I have drawers full of gadgets. One of the biggest things I invested in when I first got into quilting was rulers. Now, rulers aren't necessarily gadgets, but they're specialty rulers. Anything a specialty ruler does, in most cases, you can do with a little thought and effort with a regular ruler. Now, there may be certain things, but those certain things that need a ruler to cut them out in a certain shape, well, those are basically glorified templates for it all. I mean, if it's something you want and it would make your life easier, then go for it. But beware of the number. There's as many rulers out there as there are quilters. I swear. I have a drawer full of rulers. We did an episode on that some time ago. They all sit there rotting because they were one-offs, or they were ones that sounded like a good idea at the time and weren't such a good idea when I got them home. But I've bought other gadgets. My latest gadget, which I just did a review on the Idiot Quilter a couple of weeks ago, is the Magic Binding Machine. That makes your binding without any heat. Well, you'll have to go back a couple of episodes on Idiot Quilter to find that review. But bottom line is, that was a waste of $50-some. because that's what it cost me. Canada prices, okay? American prices cheaper. But nevertheless, but it sounded like a good idea at the time. It needs some improvement. So it's very easy to part with your money. Think of it. Every gadget you buy is money you could be spending on fabric. Okay. And I'm sure there's gadgets for garment making as well.
Yeah, there are. Yeah, there are. I bought a few gadgets. Like I bought one that's a big, I can't remember, it was an accordion style thing. And it's supposed to help you shape.
Oh, the gauge.
It's supposed to help you figure out the exact spacing on your buttons. Well, I have never used it.
And it's not a newfangled invention. They've been around for a long, long time. But basically it's points on an accordion like thing, and you push them out, and you can make it all even, and then you use those little points to mark where you're going to put your buttonholes and everything's supposed to be even. But which maybe that works for some people.
Yeah, I mean, I just use the old-fashioned way. I just measure it down.
Yeah. So just beware, because you're going to buy, especially new quilters. And I know every quilter that sees this on here, every sewer, has got at least one drawer in their sewing area that's full of stuff that you went, well, it seemed like a good idea at the time. Yeah. Okay. One last thing that I wanted to bring up. And this comes from a comment from a subscriber to last week's video about FPP in the hoop. And she wrote, Becky said, Anita Good Design has some of these, meaning the blocks for in quilts that we were showing last week. And I said, I'm having a hard time finding any. And she said, the Mariner's Compass comes to mind. Pricey, but you get a lot for the money. Well, the Mariner's Compass, I have done a Mariner's Compass. It's right behind me, behind the Canadian flag between Walter and I. And that was done in the hoop. But that is not what I was talking about. That is not FPP, okay, the way they do that. But I did look up Anita Good Design. And here's what I found. They actually do have, they call them jelly roll quilt blocks. But they basically are doing blocks in the hoop. They call it the flip and fold method, which is how you do these kind of things. But it is FPP for this kind of thing. The only thing is these are pretty simplistic that they're showing here. You know, like you don't need to do those on an embroidery machine. You can do any of these pretty much on your domestic machine at the same time. Like this is just a rail fence.
Yeah.
You know, like you can put the rows together. So they're out there. What I've been looking for are much more complex designs, the kind of thing you use traditional FPP for. You know, the kind of things that would have Y seams or just are impossible angles. You just can't sew them. You're doing traditional patchwork method, and I'm not finding many of those on there. But thank you, Becky, for that suggestion. Because actually this looked kind of interesting anyways, what they were doing. But I'm not wasting. I think they want like, yeah, it's 28% off. They want $68 for this set of files. So yeah, a little pricey. But Anita Good Design is very pricey on their files anyways. So I think that's it this week.
Yeah, I mean, we were kind of all over the place with this. Basically, some people get intimidated with sewing, and it's easy to be intimidated, but just take everything slow, one step at a time, and you build on your knowledge as time goes on.
Yeah, you learn as you go, kind of a thing. And, well, I'm still learning.
And then you sometimes make mistakes.
Oh, sometimes, oh no, I make a lot of mistakes. But you know, I think it's with experience you learn, even when you make a mistake, how to recover from it. You know, how you can fudge it with it, kind of a thing. So, yeah. So next week, I'm going to do a presentation for you. I'm going to give you the guild presentation that I did back a month or so ago when I got invited to a couple of different guilds to speak. And I thought maybe you'd be interested in hearing that, although I will probably change it a little bit to suit this environment that we're in as well. and Walter will have a chance to criticize it as well, which I'm sure everybody's going to want to tune in for that too. And then from there, I don't know what we're going to do. We're still looking for ideas. I think we will.
We'll visit the bag.
We'll revisit the bag, and we'll use this as the model of what not to do. And actually, just off the top of my head, as we start to work on a bag, Walter teaches me how to make this style of bag, but the correct way.
Yeah,
we
okay,
can
well,
find out
I'll
what I
have
do.
to. I have one. I have a disassembled bag that I haven't put together yet upstairs, but I will maybe do a couple of embroidery pieces and show you what I did to make them and sort of show how the bag gets assembled.
Yeah. So now that may not be for a bit. It depends, because we have in the middle of May, we leave for Holland for 2 weeks. So there won't be any So Chatties during that time. There will be videos and stuff, but those will be geared towards our trip and everything that we're doing while we're over there, kind of a thing. So we'll see how it all works out. But in the meantime, please, please, we need ideas. We need suggestions. I mean, today's came from a suggestion. And at my first, when I read this suggestion, I went, yeah, but I think we've done something like that already.
Yeah, but you know what? There's new people on
Yeah,
the
new
channel
people. And this was different than what we had done before, too.
Yeah.
So thank you for the suggestion. And I'm sorry I don't remember who sent that in to me, but thank you for that. So, yeah, send us your suggestions. Okay, so I'll see maybe some of you at the retreat this weekend as well. We'll talk all about what happened at the retreat next week. Probably talk about it on Stephen and Walter Live too this week as well. So yeah, so have a good week, or what's left of it, and we'll see you next week, if not sooner. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.